What's going on, everybody? It's Warren. Welcome back to the Cosmic Wonder, and Andrew Garfield is finally talking about his role returning as his Spider-Man in SpiderMan No Way Home. Remember when he said that he wasn't the werewolf, when he was very adamant that he wasn't the werewolf? And remember when he said that the photo was photoshopped on Jimmy Fallon?
Well, if you show me the photo, I can tell you whether it's me or whether it's a real thing.
It's been erased. It's been erased off the internet.
Oh, how convenient, Detective Fallon. I heard about it. And I did see it. And it's a Photoshop.
We say no.
I'm trying to manage expectations. You say no.
Well, now here we are. And obviously we all know now that he is actually in Spider-Man No Way Home with Tobey Maguire. And this is the first time that he's actually opening up about being in the film. In an interview with Variety, he actually talks about a lot, including what it was like when he first got the call from Kevin Feige and Amy Pascal over at Marvel and Sony. And they actually talk about his future coming up. There have been a lot of rumors and reports about whether or not he's going to be returning. A lot of reports about him being in multiple projects, maybe both in the MCU and in the Sony universe. So this article is going to shed a lot of light on what that was like when Andrew first got the call, what it was like working on Spider-Man No Way Home with Tobey Maguire and Tom Holland, and if he is open to return for some future projects. So let's dive into it. But first, if you're new, be sure to subscribe so you don't miss out on any of the latest MCU, Sony, Spider-Man universe, and Spider-Man news. So the title of this Variety article is titled, Andrew Garfield Finally Spills About Spider-Man Return and Future. And we're going to go down to the first question that they ask him, which is, starting simple, why did you say yes to No Way Home? And here's what he said. I wasn't expecting to ever have a conversation again about potentially playing Peter Parker. I felt very excited to just be a fan again. But I got this call from Amy Pascal and Kevin Feige and John Watts with this idea. It was immediately undeniable. It sounded incredibly fun, incredibly spiritual, trippy, and thematically interesting. On a base level, as a Spider-Man fan, just the idea of seeing three Spider-Men in the same frame was enough. This is pretty cool because I think Andrew, because of the hate that he got for the Amazing Spider-Man franchise, which again is not his fault. I think he did a really good job at playing Spider-Man. It's not his fault that the movies weren't necessarily good. But I think this is really cool because he clearly put all that behind him, right? I'm sure he went through a lot, but eventually he did put all that behind him and became a Spider-Man fan because he said so many times he's a huge Spider-Man fan, So he finally got to a place, it sounds like, where he's just sitting back and enjoying everything. And then he gets this incredible call from Amy Pascal over at Sony and Kevin Feige, the president of Marvel Studios. And they ask him to come back as Spider-Man. Here's what he continues to say. The pitch was really, really enticing. They said, you played this character in your way, and what would you want to explore if you had an opportunity? If you were dumped into this other universe and faced with this younger you and this older you, how will you respond? And it's really cool that on this call, they actually asked him, right? Because it's his Spider-Man. How would you feel if you were in this situation? How would your Spider-Man, your Peter Parker react if you saw an older one and a younger one, which was Tom Holland? So that's really cool that they asked for his input. But he goes on to say, we talked a lot about mentorship, which is really cool. And I really love that about the movie. We talked a lot about brotherhood and about what it is to be the older brother, younger brother, and the middle brother. There's also a thing of seeing someone you love walking down a path that you've already walked down. And you know it doesn't lead to the place where you ultimately meant to go. And we saw this in the movie where he's telling Tom Holland's Peter Parker, I stopped holding my punches. I got bitter. And he kind of lost himself. Goes on to say that the character is isolated in his emotional experience and physical experience. But what happens when that aloneness gets blasted open and you come to realize that you've never been alone and there are other brothers going through the exact same thing? That's a big spiritual journey to go on, man. And then we just milked out all the fun that we possibly could have. And I think they definitely did. And it's very, very interesting because I think as far as the character is concerned, not him personally, but the character after losing Gwen, seeing the other two, like the whole I've always wanted brother line that he says in the movie is like really, really cool. And I think for his character, that was like a really, really huge moment for him. And I do hope we see more of his character, which we are going to talk about because he talks about. And it's just so amazing that they came back. And in fact, the next question says, you and Tobey Maguire really did this. This wasn't a green screen set up in your driveway, and they have a profound impact on Tom Holland's Spider-Man. Andrew Garfield said, we were shooting for 2 weeks, Tobey and I, but I think we managed to achieve something that is not just showing up and going, hi, bye. My Spider-Man got to save his younger brother's romantic relationship, potentially, and to heal the most traumatic moment of his own life through doing it for his younger brother, making sure that he didn't have the same fate. There's something cosmically beautiful about that. It meant getting a second chance at saving Gwen. And that's huge. And that was, I think, to me, the best part of the film. Every time I've watched the movie, I have cried at that part because Andrew, he lands and he's crying because he's like, oh my gosh, I did it, right? I couldn't do it before. I couldn't save my Gwen, but I could save my younger brother's Gwen, right? His MJ. I did it, right? I failed before, but I did this time. It's a huge redeeming moment. And as we can see right here from what he said, it's cosmic, right? It's a cosmically beautiful thing that he's able to do this. And it's to me, I think the best part of the movie. And they actually go on to talk about the redemption. One of the questions says, a lot of the conversation about this movie has been about a sort of redemption for your Spider-Man, narratively, commercially. How does that feel? And this is what Andrew said. I'm so grateful. I'm just really, really grateful that I got to tie up some loose ends for the Peter Parker that I was playing. I love that character, and I'm grateful that I got to work with these incredible actors, this incredible director, and Marvel in conjunction with Sony. It was joyful and a feeling of closure for me. There were so many unanswered questions for my Peter, where we left it. I got to step back in and get some healing for him, and also really supporting Tom Holland's Peter and honoring his character completing that trilogy, not distracting or detracting from it. And I think that's actually something they did incredibly well. The other Spider-Man came in, but they didn't really take away from Tom Holland's story. They added to it, right? They became his Uncle Ben's in a type of way. They became his mentors, his older brothers. They added to everything. They didn't steal the spotlight. They shared it together for that moment, and Tom still had his spotlight at the end, and I really, really enjoyed it because I think they did that perfectly, and I think that's what Andrew is saying right here. But now for, the big question right here, would you be open to coming back to the character? Again, a lot of rumors have been going around about him returning, and here's what he says. I mean, yes, definitely open to something if it felt right. Peter and Spider-Man, those characters are all about service to the greater good and the many. He's a working class boy from Queens that knows struggle and loss and is deeply empathetic. I would try to borrow Peter Parker's ethical framework in that. If there was an opportunity to step back in and tell more of that story, I would have to feel very sure and certain in myself. And I think after Spider-Man No Way Home, he could definitely feel sure and certain for himself because they did it right. I think if they did a project with Sony or in the MCU, they would definitely nail it down for his character, especially after this big redeeming moment for him in Spider-Man No Way Home. I think there's a lot more story to tell now, more than before, actually, because he's had that redeeming moment. So they can tell what he's gone through before. They can kind of give us, a tiny little flashback of him in No Way Home and then tell his story going on from here, how he's redeemed himself, how he's not bitter anymore. And maybe Tobey can come back and maybe he can see Tom's Peter Parker as well. Who knows? I think there's a lot of potential here. A lot of potential here. And it looks like Andrew Garfield, if given the opportunity, will come back. And I think based off of everything that we've heard from some credible insiders, they're definitely talking about it right now, working on maybe that perfect fit for him to come back as his Spider-Man. And hopefully that means the same thing for Tobey. I get it, Tobey's a little bit older, but I'd still love to see him come back. Maybe not get his own solo movie, but maybe if Andrew gets another solo movie, Tobey could appear and we could get more of the Spider-Men together again. But this is just awesome. Andrew was finally talking about Spider-Man No Way Home after denying that he is a werewolf, after denying that he is in the film. Obviously, we get it. He has to deny it, right? We knew that he couldn't just come out and say, hey, yeah, no, totally, I'm in the movie. But I think him going, on these talk shows and stuff, denying it, built up a lot of hype, and I think it was really, really well done. And I loved him in No Way Home. I love Toby. Let me know what you guys think about this in the comments down below, though. I'm hoping that he returns, and I'm hoping we get The Amazing Spider-Man 3, or he jumps into another project along the line. That's what I'm hoping for. Fingers crossed. I know a lot of people want that as well. So be sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you don't miss out on any of the latest Spider-Man news, specifically involving Andrew Garfield. For live updates, you can follow me on Instagram and Twitter. And as always, thank you all so much for watching. Woof woof.